Welcome students to the 5 editorials of the week. This is Madhavi presenting you from Kingmakers IAS Academy. So this 5 important topic is from the Hindu. So this particular initiative is to reduce the challenge that the students have in taking notes from the editorials and also using those notes to answer to write your answers in the mains questions. So this challenge has been reduced by this, but I don't subscribe to actually don't not reading the newspaper and going only with this video. Please do read the newspaper, and this 5 editorials of the week video will add value to your reading and give you all the stock points that is from most important topic that I searched from this week editorials. So let's get started with the session, students. So the topic of discussion today is first focusing on diseases sidelined by COVID-19, which was in Monday, 23rd August. Taukte, yours, and planning for the next. This was in 24th August. The ugly face of the crime fighting move, which was in 25th August. It's time for Industry 4.0, which was in 26th August. And asset monetization. The execution is the key, which was in 27th and 28th August. So let's get started with the first topic. Focusing on diseases sidelined by COVID-19. This topic is very relevant because there is a syllabus topic that is in GS2, issues relating to development and management of social sector or services relating to health, education, and human resources. Since health is one important topic in the general studies too, this important editorial have given a new perspective to tell that there is a problem in the health infrastructure. So let's see what is the author says. The author is saying that, to simply, in a nutshell, the author is saying that COVID-19, which is a communicable diseases. So as you all know, communicable means that the disease can spread from one patient to another. So it is contagious. But there are certain diseases which are called NCD, which does not spread between humans to humans, like through air or through water or through sperm, ovum, the saliva, whatever be. So these are the diseases which does not spread. These are called as NCD, that is non-communicable diseases. These diseases are some like cancer, diabetes, heart disease, chronic lung disease, and other NCDs. So what are the root cause of it? Physical inactivity, alcohol abuse, tobacco, and healthy diet. So like say for example, you eat lots of sugary items, you end up in diabetes. So these are the things. So certain, say for example, you eat lots of lead in your diet, then you will end up having a cancer. Tobacco, you will have a lung cancer or mouth cancer. So like this, there are so lots of non-communicable diseases which are basically caused by these abuse. So these non-communicable disease is one important healthcare issue that the people are having. But COVID-19, what happened is this COVID-19 has taken the focus and the resources away from NCD, that is the healthcare services that should have been given to the non-communicable diseases have been disrupted because there is one important disaster which happened, which is COVID-19 pandemic. So all the resources were taken away from NCD and focused on COVID-19. So this one disruption that created lots of problems, which the author wants to speak. So let's get into the stock points that is there in this particular editorial. The premise is the NCD intervention missed in this pandemic. So what are the points to be noted? The challenges. Students, there are certain facts. You can input certain fact which is easier for you to write in your answers. So there are lots of facts which will be given in the editorial. Please ensure that what are the facts which are easily you can memorize and you can write in short words. So that is the fact that you can actually import into your answer writing. So I have given 2 facts in this editorial. You can use any of the facts. Nearly 71% of all deaths worldwide occur due to non-communicable diseases, such as hypertension, diabetes. 1 out of every 4 deaths occur due to cardiovascular diseases, especially among younger patients. So this younger patient is usually affected by this NCD, which is very, very important thing to know. Because usually, usually people think that diabetes is affecting all 60 plus, but this does not happen. Even cardiovascular disease, I found many of my seniors within the years of 35 plus have died due to cardiovascular diseases, cardiac attack. I was surprised. It happened. It's happening. Okay, so this cardiac attack is affecting the younger patients like 35 plus. So this is one important challenge we have in the demographic dividend. So as we know, we have a lots of youth population which is higher than the older and the children population. So this is called demographic dividend. So this demographic dividend is affected by people who are having this NCD in their younger age itself. So this is one important challenge to the demographic dividend. So that is also you have to know here. And 1 out of 2 with diabetes is unaware of it. As I told you, everybody thinks that diabetes is affecting only 60 plus people. The people who are younger age, like 35 plus, are not testing their the sugar levels, but they do have some diabetes. Even if it is not, they might have their diabetes in the initial stage. If they have detected it, they would have addressed it very well, but they are unaware of it at all. Who goal of 25% relative reduction in overall mortality. That is, World Health Organization usually comes up with a goal to reduce diseases. Here, the WHO says the diseases, that is cardiovascular disease, cancer, diabetes, or chronic respiratory diseases, has to be at least 25% reduced by 2025. This is the goal that WHO has set. But will we be able to attain it? No, because COVID-19 has disrupted the focus on these diseases. So let's see what are the measures we have done. National Health Mission has already launched, that is in 2010 itself it has launched, National Program for Prevention and Control of Cancer, Diabetes, Cardiovascular Disease and Stroke. This particular program, what it does is, it will strengthen the health infrastructure, promotes good health, human resource development like doctors, nurses, and early diagnosis. That is, they will detect the diabetes in the early stage itself and they will manage it and also refer to a doctor if needed treatment. Like you need to go for a injection to reduce your sugar level, like that. The threat, what is the threat in this COVID-19 pandemic? The maternal healthcare services, immunization, health surveillance, and screening and management of NCDs have all been severely disrupted. Even the pregnant ladies could not go to the hospitals because of this COVID-19 lockdown. They were, we have seen in news, the ladies were got delivery in the roads. So these disruptions were caused by COVID-19 because of the lockdown, because there was no access to public transports, and also the hospitals were converted to COVID care centers. So let's see all the points in a tabular column in the next slide. That is here. Problems. What are the problems? The supply side problem and demand side problem. Students, certain problems you can categorize into supply side problem and demand side problem. Though the editorial has not told about what supply side or demand side, I have categorized this problem into these two. So you can actually categorize like this in your answer writing also. Please do that. Supply side problem. Staffs are reassigned, so like doctors. Say, for example, 10 doctors who are actually treating NCD will now be asked to go to the COVID care. So these staffs were reassigned. Cancellation of screening and treatments. So screening and treatments for the NCD, the like diabetes, cancer. So there will be cancellation because the doctors will be unavailable because doctors go for COVID duties. And the shortage of medicine diagnostics technologies, because the medicines, even the pharmaceuticals, are now focusing on COVID-19, COVID-19 medicines rather than the medicines for the diabetes. So there will be a shortage of medicine, diagnostics, and technology. Even the transports, they will be transporting only COVID-19 related medicines rather than the medicines related to NCDs. So there will be shortage of medicines and also shortage of diagnostics. This is one important thing. Say, for example, even if I go to a scan center for testing my sugar level, they will ask me whether you are COVID positive or negative. So like this, there is a disruption because the people were not allowed to screen or like cancer screening because they have to first test their COVID negative and then only they can be screened. So this COVID negative report will take around 2 to 3 days, and also it will cost me so much. The people will not be interested in going and testing itself. So that is one important problem. And technologies were also in shortage during this time. And hospitals were converted to COVID care centers. Even my friend who was referring some hospital for her pregnancy, she changed her hospital because that hospital was converted into a COVID care center. So like this supply side problem was there. What about the demand side problem? The people were not going out itself, and they will not go into a hospital itself because there will be lots of COVID patients who are coming. So they will also be contracting COVID. So they were fearing to go to hospital itself because of this COVID time. And there were lack of public transport. And the people, because of the lockdown and loss of job, loss of family members, their mental health were affected. So they were not treating themselves properly. Say for whatever be. Say for example, there is a old man. Her wife has been lost. Okay, he will not be in a proper mental condition to treat his diabetes or treat his cancer. So he'll be in a mental health problem. So these are one important challenge that the demand side also. Increase in consumption of alcohol and tobacco was also there because the people, though the alcohol shops and tobacco shops were closed, but still there were certain issue of alcohol and tobacco which was there when there was a release of lockdown, and there was lots of abuse of this alcohol and tobacco, which increased the risk of these NCD diseases. And what are the solutions? One, telemedicine. Telemedicine is one important rising sector which can help patients who are remotely present. Say, for example, I am a doctor. I will be able to treat a patient in my village, or my village is Puliyangalam in near Madurai. So I'll be able to treat a patient in Puliyangalam just from here, just like I'm taking a class from my place to you. I'll be able to treat a patient from here to the remote villages. So telemedicine is one important thing, that is you are exporting the healthcare services through internet to a patient who is there in the remote area. So that will reduce your out-of-pocket expenditure also, because the doctor will have reduced expenses, and so he will not charge the patient who are far away so much, and the patient need not travel too much into the hospitals, and that traveling cost and loss of job, loss of daily wage because he has to come to the hospital, are all saved because there is a telemedicine option which is available. And this will reduce the out-of-pocket expenditure. What is this out-of-pocket expenditure is? That is the money that is money which is spent on the healthcare services from the pocket, because this health issue is actually will cause a patient or cause a person to go into poverty. Because say for example, there is a person who is having a daily wage of 20 rupees. Say for example 20 rupees, he'll be able to buy rice and eat a day. But say for example, suddenly he got some health issue, his whole savings and whole daily wages will all be gone. Okay, so this is one important disruption in his whole life if he's getting to any health problem. So this telemedicine, reducing his out-of-pocket expenditure, can help in his savings, and also can help in his help prevent him from going into poverty. So that is one important thing that you have to know. And next is strengthening public healthcare centers with all of society approach. This all of society approach was proposed by the World Health Organization. So the primary healthcare centers, which is there in the bottom level, that is in the grassroots level, will be, that is PHCs is the most important thing. which is there in the grassroots level, and then you have the secondary healthcare centers, and then tertiary healthcare centers, which is at the apex. So this primary healthcare centers will have the ASHA workers who are who will go door to door also to treat the patients. So this primary healthcare center, which is there in the grassroots level, that is in the villages, that is in the districts, will actually cater to the problems like this NCD. Like say, for example, there are 10 old patients. This ASHA worker will go and issue the diabetics medicines and all. So this primary healthcare center must be strengthened, and an all of society approach must be there. So what is this all of society approach? It has to treat the patient who are old, treat the patient who are young and vulnerable, the SC, STs, the minorities, etc. So all of society approach must be there in the primary healthcare centers. Then incentivizing ASHA workers, because these ASHA workers are very poor, they are not properly paid. They have to be incentivized to go door to door to treat the patient for the NCDs, and also screen and diagnose the patient for NCDs. So that is very important to incentivize this ASHA workers. Online campaigns like for healthy diet, tobacco cessation, and rehabilitation, productive life is all important, because this tobacco usage is actually resulting in lots of cancer, cardiovascular diseases, whatever be. Even this tobacco is also creating problems for those who are in the vicinity. Like say, for example, a father smokes, the mother will also be affected, and also the children will also be affected because of the passive smoking. That is inhaling the smoke which is released by the person who is smoking. So this is important for the patient to stop tobacco usage. So tobacco cessation, which means stopping the tobacco usage and rehabilitating patient, because it is not easier to stop tobacco usage because they will have lots of mental problems as well as physical problems. To suddenly stopping the tobacco, they have to be rehabilitated slowly. So this rehabilitation requires the efforts of ASHA workers and other doctors in the primary healthcare centers. So they are needed, and there should be an online campaign also to initiate this tobacco cessation and rehabilitation, and also say what is a good diet. And multidisciplinary approach is needed. That is, this fight against NCD is not one spot addressing problem, because you need the efforts of administration, you need the efforts of the health department like doctors, nurses, and also the family members and the other patient like society. Even the society will play a major role in tobacco cessation rehabilitation. Like say, for example, the shops should not sell tobacco. So that is one important thing. So these are all the multidisciplinary approach that has to be there. Say, for example, there is a small boy who starts smoking tobacco. There are lots of environment or society which actually initiates this small boy to start his tobacco usage, because his mother or father would have had this habit, or his friends would have had this habit. So he also in turn learned this habit. So like this, there are society which is playing a major role in tobacco initiation. So they should also work against this tobacco usage also. So there is a multidisciplinary approach from the government side, and also within the society it has to happen, and also in the health department and other human resources will also play a major role in this. So these are the solutions that the author is giving. So please make a note that you have to know that this COVID-19 has taken away the focus from the NCD issue. So NCD can be a question. They may not ask you COVID-19 as a question, because last time itself it was asked. So now they can ask you about the non-communicable diseases. So know what are the challenges, what are the government measures that have been there, whether it is enough, and what other measures we have to do. So like this, you have to frame your notes making, and that will help you in your answer writing. Then the next topic, top 10 yours and planning for the next. This is important because this is there in the General Studies 3, disaster and disaster management. So Tauktae, Yaas and planning for the next is about the cyclone disaster and overall disaster problems that the India is facing, because India and the world is facing because of the climate change. The climate change has intensified the extreme disasters like cyclones, floods, drought, everything. So this is one important topic which is there in the General Studies 3. So, and there are only very few resources that is there for this topic of disaster and disaster management. So these editorials, which is coming in the news, have to give you all stock points for your mains answer writing. So this is one important cycle that usually you have to know when you study this disaster and disaster management. Whenever you're addressing the problem of disaster, you have to start with mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. So please do make a note of this particular cycle, so that every answers you are writing should have included all these factors into, so that the measures are comprehensive in your answers. Premise: rise in frequency of devastating cyclones. So as I said, the climate change and other factors are playing into increasing the number of cyclones that is affecting the coastlines. The points to be noted of this: the loss because of this Tauktae and Yaas is this: 199 people died, 37 million people were affected, and the economic loss was around $320 billion, which is around $4.3 billion. In addition, a crop area of 0.24 million hectares were affected, and around 0.45 million houses were damaged. So you have to know, why am I telling all these numbers? This number will tell you how intense this particular cyclones are. So that will tell you the danger that is there in our faces and what we have to do. So moreover, 12.5 million people were evacuated to cyclone shelters and relief camps in these two states. There was large scale uprooting of trees. So this important thing also you have to note, because in the earlier cyclones and all, the policy makers were not focusing on uprooting of trees. This uprooting of trees have a cyclic effect, because when cyclone is there will be uprooting of trees. This uprooting of trees will affect the soil stability. So when the soil is not stable, whenever the cyclone is affecting again, there will be major disaster. So this disaster will again get intensified if there is no trees at all. So this cycle goes on. So uprooting of trees by earlier cyclone will cause more problems in the next cyclones. So this is one problem. So that is a focus from this cyclone Tauktae and Yaas, and much before that also. So we have also faced certain cyclones in Chennai very recently. So you have to study about this cyclone, because this cyclones were very well in news. So there can be a question on cyclones as such in the GS3 disaster and disaster management. The reason is this: increasing sea surface temperature in the northern Indian Oceans and the geoclimatic conditions in India. So these are important things you should know. That is, sea surface temperature in northern Indian Ocean is increasing. So northern Indian Ocean, which is the Arabian Sea, and you have Bay of Bengal here, and you have the Indian Ocean here. So the northern Indian Oceans are getting an increase in temperature. So because of increase in temperature, you have this low pressure. When there is a low pressure which is formed, there will be the wind which is attracted towards this low pressure, and there will be condensation, updrafting of air, and there will be condensation, and there will be rainfall. And this point of low pressure, which is called a cyclone, will be traveling into the coastlines, and it will create a disaster in the coastal areas. So this is how the tropical cyclone, which is a low pressure center, goes into the coastal areas and affect the population there. So not just population, the infrastructure and the crops, everything. So this is important to understand. So there is a geoclimatic conditions and the increasing sea surface temperature, which is playing a role in this particular problem. The challenge is this. The World Bank and the United Nations 2010 estimate that around 200 million city residents would be exposed to storms and earthquakes by 2050 in India. Third, this cyclone, you have to know why am I talking about cyclone specifically, because cyclones are the third most lethal in all disasters, second most expensive in all among all disasters, second most frequent among all disasters. So the cyclone is very, very important to manage in this disaster management. Asian Development Bank's report in 2014 estimated that India would suffer a loss of around 1.8% of GDP annually by 2050 from climate-related events. So this is one important topic. And also, students, I want to give you one important added information that around the world, if you see around 100 kilometer from the coast, say for example, if there is a sea here, okay, this is the coastal line, 100 kilometers from here, that is within the land, there are 40% of the world population is present. That is 40% of the world population is present within 500 kilometers of the sea. So see how much populated this coastal area is. So when cyclone is getting affecting these coastal areas, there will be huge human loss, huge infrastructure loss. As you all know, because coastal cities are most important flourishing cities, that is very economically very important, whether it is because of the ports or because of the oil and hydrocarbons or because of the employment facilities, and even because of the importance of the water. So the coastal areas are becoming most important. If you see India itself, you have most of the important cities along the coast, like starting from the eastern side, like Kolkata, Bhubaneswar, Chennai, this side Mumbai. So even in certain cities in Gujarat. So we have most of the cities in the coastal areas, the most flourishing city in the coastal areas. So these cyclones, which are affecting only the coastal areas, will create a huge disaster in the infrastructure and the human population in this particular area. So you have to understand this disaster which is there. Steps taken by Odisha government. That is, Odisha government was facing the cyclones loss for many a times, even super cyclones like Taukte, even before that is like 1999, there was a Vyal super cyclone. So Odisha government has learned their lessons and they have come with lots of measures that was hugely applauded. Let's see what are the measures. First is disaster warning system. So early warning system is there to understand the cyclone movement and warning the fishermen, the people in the coastal areas even before 2 or 3 days, so that they can be properly evacuated and can be provided in shelters. Then evacuation shelters are also constructed properly. Odisha State Disaster Management Authority is there to manage all the problems. And cabinet meetings for disaster preparedness is also conducted every time when there is a disaster which is happening. And Odisha Disaster Rapid Action Force is very, very, very energetic and very well advanced to cater to all the problems. But the author says these measures are not enough, not adequate. Let's see what are the room for improvement. The steps needed further to improve the cyclone warning system. That is, you have to improve the technology which is used in the cyclone warning system. If you could warn the people before 2 days, take a technology which can warn even before 5 days. Because when you see there are fishermen who are out to the sea 2 to 3 days before. So say for example 5 days before even. So when we are knowing that the cyclone's only 2 days before, it will be hard for those fishermen to be warned and also take to come back to the coastal areas. So you have to improve the technologies which you have to warn very well in advance, like 5 or 6 days. Revamping disaster preparedness. As I told you in the cycle itself, that mitigation and preparedness is first two steps that is very important when you are preparing for the disasters. So preparedness is very, very important. So the infrastructure, the human, the other sectors like economy have to be prepared when there is a disaster, because you can't stop a disaster when it's happening, like the cyclones. So you have to be prepared to face it and get adapted to it. Why did shelter belt plantation? Belt plantation means that, say for example, if there is a huge wave, this is called storm surge. Storm surge, which is created by the cyclones in the sea. Because this cyclones, which is creating a low pressure center, will actually push the waters to a greater height. So this is called a storm surge. This storm surge will create a coastal flood in the coastal areas. So this coastal flood will affect the people who are present in the coastal areas. So in order to reduce the impact of this coastal flood, if you are planting trees in the near the coastal areas, which is called a shelter belt, then you will be able to reduce the impact of the coastal flood due to this storm surge, because the height of the waves will get reduced because it is stopped by the trees here present in the coastal areas. So that is what the author says. Then regenerating mangroves. Say for example, Sundarbans, which is there in the Western Ghats, if at all properly there, it will reduce again, just like shelter bill, it will reduce the impact of the storm surge. Actually, this mangroves is called as bioshield. You can write this word bioshield. Bioshield. So this mangroves will act as a bioshield in reducing the impact of the disaster, whether it is a tsunami or storm surge or any other high tides. The mangroves, which is acting as a bioshield, will reduce the impact of the waves. Then cost-effective long-term mitigation measures are needed. Mitigation means reducing the impact of the disaster, reducing the intensity and reducing the occurrence of the disaster itself. That is what mitigation measures means. Then cyclone resilient infrastructure must be constructed. Say for example, there is a power infrastructure like the transmission lines, the transmission wires, and even the Wi-Fi connections, and the hospitals. There are lots of infrastructure. These infrastructures has to be protected from the flood. Say for example, if you see Chennai floods itself, Chennai floods, if you see, there are lots of infrastructure which are constructed in very, very unstable soil. So these will go waterlogged when there is a flood. So there should be construction which prevents such waterlogging in the particular area. So that is also called as resilient infrastructure. Resilient means it will not be affected by a cyclone. So it stands erect even if there is a cyclone. So such infrastructure is needed, whether it is a roads or a railways or a buildings, everything has to be cyclone resilient, because you know that there are cyclones which is affecting in these particular coastal areas. So you should construct infrastructure in such a way that it is able to withstand when there is a cyclone. Concrete houses for vulnerable, because slum area, if you see recently in Mumbai, it happened that there was a landslide and the slum area was affected because they were having just kacha houses. So you need pakka houses for the vulnerable people. Massive community awareness campaign is also needed, because they have to know when the cyclone is happening and what are the measures that has to be taken when the cyclone is happening, and how they should protect themselves when the cyclone is happening. So these awareness campaign has to be done. And collective mitigation efforts between center and state is very important. So whenever a disaster is considered to be a national disaster, then the center will come into role. But even when not, the state will have to rope in center to mitigate the disasters whenever it is happening. Because just state will not be able to have certain the human resources and the financial resources to mitigate or reduce the disasters. So center and state have to coordinate in this particular thing, and so it is called as cooperative federalism. So with this topic, so you have to understand that there is most important points for the cyclones have been covered in this editorial itself. So one important topic you have covered in General Studies 3. Then the ugly face of a crime fighting move is the third editorial we will be talking. This have importance in General Studies 2, e-governance, application models, successes, limitations, and potential. Here the author is talking about the problems that the facial recognition system is having, where the facial recognition system is used for crime detection. As you know, what is this facial recognition system? Facial recognition system will take all the data from the biometrics, like the eyes, the position of the eye, the position of the nose, the position of the mouth, and other important parameters from your face, and it will extract information in a code format, and it will compare the codes with the other people, and it will match. Say, for example, there is a CCTV camera which is placed in a thing. CCTV camera is placed in a place where there is a theft which happened. So there is a one particular face which were identified. So they will compare this face with the available faces in their database. So faces in database will be there. They'll be matching the face with other faces in the database, and they will find who is the person who is the culprit in that particular theft. So like this, they will be understanding the culprit in a crime. I'm just giving a small crime like a theft, like murder and everything. So this facial recognition system is important in case of a criminal investigation process. But let's see what are the problems that the facial recognition system has. What are the premise? Premise is the analysis of the national automated facial recognition system. So students, there can be a question like critically evaluate the facial recognition system in criminal investigation. So if at all there is a question like this editorial has talk points for that. Let's see what is that. Points to be noted, merits and demerits. So again, students have classified the points which are there in the editorial, which were very scattered, into the following points. Merits: strengthen criminal investigation. Yes. Strengthen the police with the information technology. So as you know, the police will be strengthened not just with the physical fitness, but also with the information of the criminal parameters, like the face, the thumbprints, everything. So information of thumbprints, the faces, and any evidences will actually strengthen the police in their investigation. And it will also strengthen the criminal investigation process as such. And even United States Federal Bureau of Investigation and UK, EU have this particular facial recognition system in their criminal investigation. So you can tell that these are the merits, that there is a need for going to national automated facial recognition system in India's criminal investigation process also. But what are the demerits? The author is saying these facial recognition systems will be abused or misused by the government or the police, because police has the power. Say, for example, police has the power. Say, for example, he wants to, he don't like a politician, or he don't like an activist, or he don't like any even his relative, say, for example, his father-in-law. So he can actually use that this technology to imprison these relative or politicians or whatever, because the police has a power and they have a technology. So abuse of technology is very easier for this police to do. So this has to be seen in that perspective also. So police or the state, if they are possessing a technology, there can be a scope for the abuse or misuse of that technology. So there has to be a check which has to be kept. and then the second point is affects individual liberty. Yes. Say, for example, my face is there in the police investigation. I can be blackmailed, that I can be I can be wrongly charged in certain cases. So this problem is there, which will affect my liberty of expression, speech. It will silence me because I will fear to speak. I will fear to appear anywhere. It will affect my freedom of movement, everything. And also, this one important thing that you have to know, China uses this particular facial recognition system for racial profiling. That is, this Uyghur Muslims who are in minorities are being brutally charged or brutally suppressed by the Chinese people. So this Chinese people are profiling those Uyghur Muslim, and they're having a mass surveillance against this Uyghur Muslims. So such a state, that is China, can use such a system against minorities. So this is one important thing where there is a misuse and abuse of technology. The threats. One is false positive. Say, for example, I can look similar to a person who was recently convicted in a murder. They will wrongly catch me. So there is a problem of false positive. And pre-trained model is one important thing. This you have to know. That is, say, for example, usually when such a system will be trained, how they will be trained? If you have done certain project in your final year, you will understand this. That is, there will be a database which is created. Say, for example, I'll be taking the faces of my friends, like 10 faces I'll be taking. I'll be taking first face, and I'll be checking with all the 10 faces. So this face has to be matching with only one person, and then the rest of the face has to say that it is a negative match, and this only thing has to be a positive match. Like this, I'll be training the model, that is the training the model with lots of faces. So there is a lots of database which is created, but this particular model will be trained one, if at all, if it is trained only with 10 faces, the model will be very vulnerable. But the model, when it is tested with thousands more of faces, then only it will be properly tested, and it will have reduced false positives like this. So because it will understand there is lots of minute changes, it has to say no. Say, for example, there are twins. These twins will have all the facial features same only, but there can be, say, for example, there can be a mole which is different from this person. Okay, so this mole or a scar, ஒரு தழும்பே இருக்குன்னு வச்சுக்கோங்க, தழும்போ ஒரு மச்சமோ, இந்த ட்வின்ல ஒரு விஷயம் சேஞ்ச் இருந்தாலும் it has to detect it. But for the model to detect this particular scar or a mole, it has to be trained a lot. So say, for example, there is a person who are disguising like me. He has to exactly disguise like me to cheat this particular system itself. Otherwise, even if one mole is there or one scar has been missed in this particular disguise, this system will find out, no, this is not Madhavi, this is somebody who is disguised as Madhavi. So like this system has to be trained. For this, it has to be trained with lots of database. What if there is no database of certain population? So certain population may not have may not have all the databases of certain populations. So this will affect the model, the system itself. It will have a bias. It will have a bias toward overrepresented data sets. That is, say for example, there can be SCs or STs who are majorly involved in a crime. Okay, say for example, there is Madhavi, who is a repeated offender. If she is a repeated offender, her particular database will be there in that particular system. So she will be thought that whatever crime happens, she will be tested against. So whenever she is tested against, sometimes it happens that there will be a false positive, and Madhavi can be charged with the criminal offense. So this bias towards overrepresented data sets will be there. And there will be a bias against underrepresented data sets. So this also happens. There is something called as bias against underrepresented data sets. So this bias is also against underrepresented data sets. Say for example, Madhavi have not been involved in any crimes. Madhavi is so very innocent, and her database would not have been there in the system itself. So Madhavi, if at all involved in any crime, her face will not be there in the particular database itself. So there will be a bias against underrepresented data sets like women, children. So wherein this is being misused. Like say for example, there is this system will be against biased against the underrepresented data set. That even if the children is involved in a crime, they will not be detected properly. So if the children is not detected properly, then there is a problem that the real criminals will use the children to actually do such a crime. So that is one important problem that there is the people are facing. Then, right to privacy, which was mentioned in the Puttaswamy judgment. So in the Puttaswamy judgment, there is certain important pointers which is there. Like a right to privacy is important within the Article 21, that is right to life and liberty, which is said in the Puttaswamy judgment. That is the autonomy of individual, the agency of the individual must not be affected by such information with the state government or with the police. Because if there is information about the person with the government, say with the like the other data with the government, they can misuse and affect the privacy of the person. So like this, not just the privacy, but also you should understand there are other freedom also which is affected. As I said, right to movement and all. But here the author is saying right to privacy is affected. The test of necessity and proportionality to curb Article 19, that is, which is given in Anuradha Basin case. Anuradha Basin case actually is upholding this Puttaswamy judgment that right to privacy is very important. This Anuradha Basin case was in the background that right to internet is also a part and parcel of Article 19 and 21, which was said in this Anuradha Basin case. Because the right to internet was curbed in the Jammu and Kashmir when Article 370 was abrogated. This Anuradha Basin case, the court said that right to internet is necessary, and this internet can be shut down only if it is necessary for the internal security and other reasonable restrictions, which is given under Article 19. And also this measure, that is internet shutdown measure, must be proportional to the threat. That is, say for example, there is a threat of terrorism. So such a huge threat of terrorism can warrant the shutting down of the internet. But here, the author is saying privacy is affected by this facial recognition, yes. Whether this facial recognition has a necessity and proportionality test satisfy that was given in this Anuradha Basin case is what the author says. The author says that it does not satisfy the test of necessity and proportionality that was given in Anuradha Basin case so as to curb Article 19, that is freedom of speech and expression. Because this facial recognition system is not satisfying this test of necessity because, say for example, Madhavi is very innocent, but still her face database is there in the system. So this affects the Article 19. And whether it is proportional to the problem, because this facial recognition system is having the database of the eyes, the nose, the mouth, everything within the database. So if anybody gets this information, she will or he will disguise as like Madhavi and will show into the system and do a crime, and then also and go away scot-free. And then who will be getting caught? It is Madhavi who will get caught, because there is another person who knows how Madhavi facial features are there, and he has disguised and done the crime, and Madhavi will be caught rather than that person. So this is a major problem that such facial recognition system has. So there is test of necessity, whether facial recognition system satisfies, no. Proportionality, no. So the author is saying the threats of this facial recognition system is it is affecting the Article 19 unproportionally, and it is not necessary to have such a facial recognition system at all, because it is prone to abuse and it is prone to misuse, is what the author is saying. And then what is the way forward? The author is saying, okay, let's have this facial recognition system, but we need certain checks and balance. How we can have this checks and balance? Through this data protection law, which was proposed recently, and it is in a joint committee stage. So let's wait for this personal data protection law to come. Then only we can have this NAFRS. Till then, please don't use this NAFRS itself. They are asking to stay the use of NAFRS until the law, that is personal data protection law, which gives the regulations for the government to hold the data and to use the data, and also the private member to hold the data and use the data. And if at all they are misusing or abusing the data, they will be penalized. So there should be a law which regulates the use of data. Then only such recognition system which has lots of data about the facial features can be implemented, is what the author is saying. And there should also be strict penalties for misuse and abuse. It should not be just a fine which can be given. It should be a great imprisonment, that is a very stringent punishment which should be given for the misuse and abuse of technology. Then the next topic is it's time for Industry 4.0. This is there in the General Studies 3, which says inclusive growth and issues arising from it. Though this particular editorial is not about Industry 4.0, but it's about MSME using this Industry 4.0. So this topic does not fall into the science and technology, rather it falls in the syllabus inclusive growth and issues arising from it, because it is saying that whether MSME will be able to adopt to Industry 4.0, that is Industrial Revolution 4.0. Why this Industrial Revolution 4.0 is there? Let's see what are the Industry Revolution 1.0, 2.0, 3.0 and 4.0 are. This first industrial revolution, which happened around 1990s, we invented steam power and water power. So the train started moving at a faster speed with the steam power. So there were lots of increase in the speed of production, transport, everything, and this initiated the Industrial Revolution 1.0. Then the 2.0 started with the electricity. It again increased the speed, the flow, everything, the supply chain, everything in the industrial production. And the 3.0, we introduced information technology, computer came in, and again, it increased the automation, everything. And now, Industry Revolution 4.0 has using cyber physical system like 3D printing, IoT like Internet of Things, artificial intelligence. So here we have the internet connected with the physical system, that is cyber net is connected to the physical system. Say for example, a train being operated by Wi-Fi technology, that is internet. So you are in a remote place and you are trying to run this train from some other place. You are controlling the train, you are ensuring that there is a proper traffic control in this train, like this. So this is called a cyber physical system. We have lots of examples like 3D printing, information, IoT, this cloud computing, artificial intelligence, machine learning, neural network, everything. So this is about Industry 4.0. Here, the author is talking about whether MSME will be able to adopt this Industry 4.0. Let's go get into the topic and the stock points there is. Premise, MSME adoption of Industry 4.0. Let's see what are the stock points that the author is giving. He's saying the potential of MSME. So whenever there is a question about MSME, you can actually give this particular fact in your introduction. MSME form more than 95% of industry in India, more than 45% of the total manufacturing output, and employ more than 40% workforce and contribute roughly to 30% of GDP. So it is the important bottom-up accelerator of our economy, or it is the backbone of our economy, you can call it, because it is having the potential of 45% of the output and 40% of workforce is employed in it. So it is the employment creating avenue. It is accelerating the economy. It is providing the input for the large industries. And it is also providing the export facilities, so on and so forth. So MSME has this much huge potential is what the author is saying. What are the prospects? Prospects means the future ambition that the MSME will have and future strategy that the MSME will have. The future strategy is MSME can use this revolution, that is fourth revolution of industries, that is adopting additive manufacturing, information, Internet of Things, cyber physical system, augmented reality or virtual reality, and data analytics as such. So these are the important things that the prospects that the MSME has. Then benefits, data-driven decisions that is can be done through this Industry 4.0 technologies. Like if you have this virtual reality, say for example, you will be able to realize how a car has to be constructed. Say for example, they can test the speed of the car. Say for example, in a virtual reality, they can run this car and see whether a tire of this shape is providing proper efficiency, or tire of certain bigger size or other shapes can provide maximum efficiency. So this can be tested not through the running of the car, but through a virtual reality or augmented reality. So you can test and redesign this particular car itself. So this particular thing helps in deciding, okay, through the data that are derived from the augmented reality or virtual reality and Internet of Things and so on and so forth. Reduce the cost of electronics like sensors. This is actually fueling the move towards Industry 4.0. That is, electronics like sensors or the cost of electronics are reducing. So there is easy way for the MSME to adopt Industry 4.0 is what the author is saying. And availability of advanced algorithms are there. So the MSME can use these algorithms to increase the efficiency, to increase the output production in their own manufacturing units. And world-class quality products are also available. And also the MSME can actually create a world-class quality product is what the author is saying. And the delivery time and the flexibility is all there because of usage of this particular Internet of Things or additive manufacturing. And if there will be an integrated and seamless supply chain with the large industries. Say, for example, there is an MSME which is producing tires for the larger industries, which is manufacturing a car. So this supply chain, that is supplying of tires to the large industry, will be seamless when the MSME is also adopting fourth industrial revolution, because the large industry has the might or has the potential to use fourth industrial revolution, and it will be using it. But the MSME, if at all, if it is not using this fourth industrial revolution, it will fall back, and they will not be integrated into the large industries. So when MSME is using the fourth industrial revolution, just like this large industry, then only there will be a connection between this MSME and the large industry. And that will be a seamless and integrated supply chain, which is there with the large industry. Then only MSME will also grow, and it will create lots of employment. That is what the author says. Challenges. Lack of awareness of fourth industrial revolution is important challenges that the MSME is facing. They are not aware that there is something called as additive manufacturing, which can actually reduce the cost of manufacturing a lot of products. Say for example, you are creating a prototype of a tire. Say for example, there is a prototype of tire. So a prototype of tire can be easily produced in a additive manufacturing very easily with a very low cost. So this, if at all MSME is not aware that there is something called as additive manufacturing to produce this prototype of a tire easily, there will be they cannot reduce the cost of operation. If their cost of manufacturing, if their cost of manufacturing is not reduced, it will be little high. So MSME will sell the tires at a higher cost rather than a lower cost, which will happen if it is using the fourth industrial revolution like additive manufacturing. So reduction of cost will lead to reduction of price also. If not, the price will be higher only. So the people will not buy that particular tire because the price is little higher if they are not using fourth industrial revolution. So there is a challenge, that is they are not aware of this fourth industrial revolution itself and considering it to be disruptive also. They are saying, no, this fourth industrial revolution will reduce employment, will cause the disruption in the earlier missions and all. So they are not using it. So that hesitation which is there in the MSME has to go. And there is a problem of finance also, because this fourth industrial revolution technologies like IoT, the augmented reality actually needs a lot of capital. Because say, for example, if you want to buy a computer, you need to at least 50,000 or 50,000, because this 50,000 is the initial capital. But if at all, if you have this money, then it will go smooth. Okay, this computer will last for around 3 to 4 or even 10 years. Okay, so then you need not spend much on this computer. So this initial capital is one hindering factor in the case of MSME growth and adoption of this Industry 4.0. Measures needed. So what have measures needed for MSME to adopt this 4.0 is this. Major financial investments are needed need experts and consultants to advise on using this IoT cyber physical system and how to use it. Positive organization culture and support of people is there, because the employers who are there have to be skilled about this technologies. Otherwise, they will not be able to adopt this particular technology. Say, for example, the industry is adopting. If the employers are not skilled enough to use this particular technology, it will go waste. So, a positive organization culture in using this particular fourth industrial revolution is needed, and the support of people is also necessary, because this this automations automated technologies are actually will reduce the employment in a short period of time. So there can be a disruption from the people not to use such technologies, because it is reducing the employment. But we need a support of people to actually use these technologies to increase efficiency and reduce the cost of production, and thereby reduce the price of those products. So then there will be increase in the investment, and then there will be a increase in employment as well. So this is needed, because support of people, without support of people, you cannot take technology into the industries, because there will be opposition from the trade unions, opposition from the people around. Like this, there is lots of problems for the industry. And the frameworks and steps of adoption is needed, because there is a need for a procedure, because MSME cannot jump into fourth industrial revolution just like that. They need a procedure, they need a framework, and they need a steps how to adopt it in a phase-wise manner. And there should be data analysis also, because this particular fourth industrial revolution has this big data. This big data has lots of data, okay, which is collected from the sensors or virtual reality, like that. So there should be a proper technology to analyze this data and to decide a particular way using those data. So there should be a data analysis which also have to be done. And way forward is this: sensitization of government, higher educational institutions, entrepreneurs, practitioners, venture capitalists, etc., to say that MSME requires fourth industrial revolution. So what the government has to do, the government has to provide certain incentives to invest on these particular technologies, and higher educational institution has to give the skilling to the graduates about these industrial technologies, and the entrepreneurs have to adopt these technologies. Practitioners, venture capitalists, all have to support these technologies which to be adopted in the MSME. So that is what the author is saying. Then the next, the last topic, asset monetization. Execution is the key. This is one important topic I found, because it has a relation with the General Studies 3 topic, Indian economy and issues relating to planning, mobilization of resources. So this mobilization of resources is important for a country, because a budget is there where you will say how much money we will get, how much money we need to spend. So this is called mobilization of resources. That is, wherever we need, wherever we can get money is the mobilization of resources. So we need money. So there is one strategy which the budget says that we will go for asset monetization. So let's see what is there the author wants to speak. There is two articles which was in the subsequent days. So I have put this particular article, very important editorial into this particular session. So assets, what are the assets? Assets means there can be a road, a rail, power transmission lines, pipelines, gas pipeline, power generation capacities, or oil pipelines, telecom, mining, airports, stadiums. Everything is a public asset. So what the proposal is that in the budget, they are saying that these assets will be monetized. That is, they will make money out of these assets. How will they make money out of this asset? They will not sell these assets. Like stadium, say for example, there is a stadium, sports stadium. They will not sell these assets for making money, but they will rent it like thing. Okay, like there is two options which are used by this asset monetization pipeline. That is, this is called as national monetization pipeline. So in this national monetization pipeline, they will say these assets are in that it will be contracted to the private party in under a PPP route, or it will be put in a trust called Investment Infrastructure Trust. So the assets can be put in a PPP mode or in this trust mode so that it will be monetized, that is to make money. In a PPP mode, what they will do is the private player will take this asset, say for example, a road. So the private player will be contracted with the road, say for example, 1 kilometer of the road. The private player will raise a toll. Okay, will construct a toll booth, and he will start getting the money from this from this toll booth, and he will use this money to properly maintain this particular road, and he will operate the road using this money. Okay, and in this toll, he will get some profit, and he will pay back the money to the government, keeping this profit. So what is the money that the government gets is that earlier government will be operating these roads. So they will be having, say for example, 1 month they are getting 1 crore rupee. After contracting it to the private player, the private player is able to gain 2 crore from this particular road in a month, the same month. Okay, he will retain the 1 crore and he will pay back 1 crore to the government. So whatever earlier the government earned, okay, the private player will return this money to the government, and extra amount he will retain as the return on investment, which is the profit for the private player. So this is how the monetization happens through a PPP mode. What about in the investment trust? That is INVIT. In this trust mode, the assets will be listed in this particular trust, and this trust, what they will do in a mutual fund format, like a mutual fund, this trust will create a shares. Okay, they will create shares in the at the cost of this asset. Say for example, this asset road, say for example, it is this asset is for 2 crore. This 2 crore will be converted into 10 shares or 100 shares, okay, of 10,000 each or 20,000 each. So this shares will be bought by the public. Okay, so the public or the private person will be buying this shares, and whatever the revenue that is gained from this road will be paid to the shareholders. So like this, there will be a mutual fund format in which this trust will be running. So the author is evaluating how this asset monetization will work, is what in this article there will be stock points for. So let's get into the topic. Premise: budgets plan to monetize public assets in order to fund the fresh capital expenditure on infrastructure to fetch around rupees 5.96 lakh crore over a 4-year period, that is 2022 to 2026, through structured leasing and securitization transactions. So they will lease the particular roads or power infrastructure to the private player, or they will do a securitized transaction like a loan. Okay, like a loan, they will give it to the private player. Okay, so there the private player will make money out of the roads and they will pay back to the government. So what are the points to be noted? The author is evaluating this particular pipeline, that is national monetization pipeline. He's saying what are the benefits? Benefits is that national monetization pipeline will use this trust or a PPP mode, and this money which is made by monetization of these assets will be used for infrastructure, that is new infrastructure which are constructed by the government. This is called as national infrastructure pipeline. So வந்து நம்ம அந்த அசெட்டை விற்கல, அசெட்டை வந்து பப்ளிக் பிரைவேட் பிளேயருக்கு கொடுத்து சம்பாரிச்சதை வச்சு நம்ம வந்து புது இன்ஃப்ராஸ்ட்ரக்சரை வந்து கன்ஸ்ட்ரக்ட் பண்ண போறோம். அந்த புது இன்ஃப்ராஸ்ட்ரக்சர் வந்து பிசிக்கல் இன்ஃப்ராஸ்ட்ரக்சரா இருக்கலாம், இல்ல சோஷியல் இன்ஃப்ராஸ்ட்ரக்சரா இருக்கலாம். பிசிக்கல்னா பில்டிங்ஸ், ரோடு இதெல்லாம். சோஷியல் இன்ஃப்ராஸ்ட்ரக்சர்னா ஹெல்த், ஹாஸ்பிட்டல்ஸ், ஸ்கூல்ஸ் இதெல்லாம். ஸோ ஏற்கனவே இருக்கிற இன்ஃப்ராஸ்ட்ரக்சரை மானிட்டைஸ் பண்ணி நம்ம புது இன்ஃப்ராஸ்ட்ரக்சரை கட்ட போறோம். ஓகே, அந்த இன்ஃப்ராஸ்ட்ரக்சர் என்ன பண்ணும்? இட் வில் ஸ்டார்ட் creating growth, and it will start creating avenues for investment, and this will increase employment, it will increase the growth, everything. So infrastructure is actually triggering factor to improve the economy. So that infrastructure, if at all properly constructed, then there will be increase in the growth. So the ஏற்கனவே சும்மா இருக்கிற இன்ஃப்ராஸ்ட்ரக்சரை நம்ம வந்து நல்லா ரன் பண்ணி மணி மேக் பண்ணோம்னா புது இன்ஃப்ராஸ்ட்ரக்சருக்கு அது அந்த மணியை யூஸ் பண்ணிக்குவோம். அதுதான் இந்த அசெட் மானிட்டைசேஷன்ல பண்றாங்க. So national monetization pipeline is using the money to create new infrastructure, is what the author is saying. What is the evaluation? First, asset evaluation has to be done. Say for example, I'm leasing a road. Okay, I'm leasing a road to the private player. So a private player is leased with this road. So the value of the road has to be evaluated. That is called asset evaluation. Say for example, in the road வந்து ஒரு 1 crore value அப்படின்னா அந்த valuation பண்ணணும். அந்த valuation வந்து it is not very easy. Okay, so there are lots of parameter which goes into the valuation of this asset, whatever be. Say for example, a road of 1 kilometer has to be valued. So then only, if it is valued only, then the private player will take interest in that particular road, and they will buy it. They will get it in lease, and they will run it, and then the remaining the profit they will have it, and the amount they have to settle it to the government, they will settle it. But this asset valuation is a major problem. Say for example, if one parameter I consider is the traffic. Say for example, this road is evaluated to value as 1 crore in this COVID pandemic. Okay, in the COVID pandemic la யாருமே பெருசா கார்ல போக மாட்டோம், அதனால டிராபிக் கம்மியா தான் இருக்கும். அந்த டிராபிக் கம்மியான நேரத்துல இந்த ரோடோட வேல்யூ வந்து 1 crore தான் இருக்கும். ஓகே, ஸோ இந்த டைம்ல நம்ம வந்து ரொம்ப அண்டர் வேல்யூ பண்ணிடுவோம் அந்த ரோட. ஸோ இந்த மாதிரி அண்டர் வேல்யூ பண்ணுறதுக்கு சான்சஸ் இருக்கு. பட் சம்டைம்ஸ் ஒரு டைம்ல இந்த பீக்ல இருக்கும், அப்போ டிராபிக் ரொம்ப அதிகமா இருக்கும். அப்போ வந்து நம்ம இந்த ரோடு வந்து 10 crore வேல்யூ அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு ஓவர் வேல்யூவும் பண்ணிடுவோம். ஸோ ஓவர் வேல்யூ பண்ணிட்டாலும் ப்ராப்ளம். So in the time, it depends on the time. So valuation is very, very difficult in that particular asset. So that is what the author is saying. So asset valuation may be less now because during the COVID time, the traffic will be less. So the value of that road will be very less. So private will get huge profit. How? Because whenever there is an undervalue of that particular road, after some times, there will be higher traffic. So say for example, when it was undervalued, say for example, the road was considered as 1 crore. So the private player will be paying the government 1 crore this month, next month also 1 crore, next month also 1 crore, next month also, next year also 1 crore, like this. But the value of the road will increase to 10 crores now. Okay, because of the traffic increase. Okay, but the private will have 9 crores in their hand, but they will pay only 1 crore to the government, which is a huge loss to the government. Okay, this will not satisfy the public interest because we wanted this money to construct the new infrastructure. If the private is making so much profit, why you should give it to the private itself? That is how the question will be asked. Okay, that is how the auditor will ask you. Okay, the auditor will come, hey, why did you undervalue this asset, is what the auditor will question you. So like this, there is a problem. So risk of adverse audit para. So auditor will screw you because you have undervalued this asset, and the profit, the private is making huge profit and the government is having a problem. So the CAG who is the auditor, of government will tell the government that you have given this uh, road to this private person because you have an excess with this private person. So like this, there can be an adverse audit paras. So changes can happen in this 30 to 60 years in which this lease is there. So the government roads are given as on a lease to the private person for 30 to 60 years. So there will be a problem of this on underutilized assets. So on underutilized assets, there is a problem. That is improving investments and efficiency by private. That is underutilized assets. Say, for example, the road is not used at all. So when the roads are not used at all, the private, they can invest and they can increase the efficiency. But to those underutilized assets, the private will not come. That is one problem. On properly utilized assets, if at all the private is coming, there will be not big change in the efficiency. There will not be big change in the profit that the private can make because it is already running properly only. So what the author is saying that you should go for monetizing only underutilized assets and don't monetize the properly utilized assets. The government itself is doing good with the properly utilized assets. Government is not doing good with the underutilized assets. So you can sell it, you can lease it to the private is what the author is saying. If a bid, if the private is bidding at a high price, then they will also charge a high toll. So the consumer and the economy will suffer is what the author is saying. So don't let the private to bid it very high, because in the competitive bidding, it happens that the private, in order to get that particular road, they will start bidding too much high. So if at all the bid is going very high, they will also get that money back through increasing the toll. So the consumers and economy will get a problem. And once a free asset, say for example, there is no toll at all in that road before, but now because of monetization, there is a private player who has got the road by lease, and they have suddenly constructed a toll booth and they start collecting toll. So the consumers who are using that road will have to pay a toll which was not there before. So the consumer will suffer, is what the author is saying against this asset monetization pipeline. And there is competitive bidding. Will the private participate? Is what the question, because lots of private players are now fearing to take the government roads or railways or anything, because the assets are in a risk that they will not earn any revenue from that particular assets. They will not be able to return on their investment, is what the private is fearing. So they are not coming for the bidding at all. So that is why the author is saying there is a lots of problem in the asset monetization. So the private will not participate in the bidding itself. So the private have to be provided certain incentives to participate in the bidding. So let's see what the government will do. Then there is another thing I told you, the trust mode. The trust mode will use a mutual fund like vehicle and provide dividend. That is, whoever having share in that particular trust will get a dividend and diversify the portfolio of assets. So say for example, the trust is having a road, transmission line in their asset. So Madhavi will buy a share in the road as well as in the transmission line. So even if transmission line is not getting me profit, I'll be getting profit from road. So at least one will get increase my income from the asset in which I have a share. So like this, there will be a diversification of portfolio of assets. Here, portfolio means road or transmission line. So the portfolio of assets is diversified. So I have lots of portfolio or of assets with me. Okay, I have a share in lots of assets. And a public authority will own significant assets, and incorrect evaluation, an increase in price for consumers will reduce. Because in this trust mode, the author is saying it is having an advantage. What advantage? This trust will create diversification of portfolio, so the consumer will get a will get proper profit, and he will not, there will not be increase in price because the the bidding is high because there is no bidding in case of this trust. Okay, and there will not be incorrect evaluation of this asset. Okay, in this particular investment trust. So the author is saying go for investment trust mode rather than the PPP mode is what the author is suggesting. So let's see the other way forward. What is the way forward? We need a asset monetization monitoring authority because this particular pipeline requires an authority to look after whether there is a proper valuation of the asset, whether there is a proper bidding process which goes on, whether the private is operating and running properly in the interest of the users. Okay, so like this, there has to be an authority to monitor this particular process. And there should be an end user interest and long-term vision in mind when you are monetizing these public assets. Because whenever the private is taking such public assets, they will only have a profit motive and not think about the social interest. So that is how, that is why it is feared against privatization. So we have to address this. Then we have this fact for mains. So I have put all the facts I found in this editorials in this week, in this particular slide. So please take a screenshot of these facts and you can very well use it in your mains answer writing. So I have 10 facts which was taken from this editorial in this week. So it has a rank of India in hunger index, peace index, and so on and so forth. So please take a screenshot of this. Okay, it need not be explained because if I'm explaining each and everything, it will take another class. So students, please use this facts for your mains answer writing. So facts must be used very, very cautiously because too many facts will affect your answers and no facts will affect your remarks. So please ensure that you're using right facts at the right time at the right place. So thank you, students. And if you have any doubts, please put it in the comment box. And thank you for listening. It's wonderful to be there with this editorial of the week every week. So thank you once again.